Somewhere in my early life, when I was a kid, I was encouraged to do things, to make things, and that would be Christmas time. I would get all kinds of craft kits. I remember one time I don't know if anybody can remember these things. It was a flower thing where you would shape the wires that they provided into loops to make petals of the flowers. And then you would dip the wires into these containers of horrible, horrible smelling things. I don't even know what it was, but it smelled highly like rubber. Well, I don't even know, like spray paint and glue, you know? Anyway, it was all different colors, and I have a picture. I won't be able to post it right now, but at some point I will, of me sitting there with my glorious production of a flower from these toxic chemicals. Anyway, it wasn't always like that. I remember that we got at Christmas those spools where you knit. You wind the yarn around the top of this spool, and then the snake comes out through the middle. I think it's called a knitting spool. And you have to flip the loops over each nail on the top, Anyway, we did that, and I remember making pot holders. Even, this is back in the 60s, So there was always encouragement for me to do and make things. I also remember that I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and my grandparents, and I learned a lot of my frugal ways from them. And she would save everything, from the little twist ties from the bread bags to just little pieces of tin foil, And she always would be boiling bones. And I didn't understand it back then. I do now. I very much appreciate all of the things that I learned from her. And she was a big maker as well. She used to sew, and she taught me how to sew. And she would crochet. I remember crochet. And she would sew bags, and then we would decorate the bags with yarn. Very simple embroidery kind of thing. And then she would sell them. And of course, she was in a senior citizen kind of mobile home park at that point in time, but she would bring me to her craft fairs and that they would have at the senior citizen place. And it's just such a wonderful experience to be encouraged like that and be supported in that, because she told me for every bag that we sold, I would get a certain amount, like maybe a quarter or something. I don't really remember the amount, because you see, the amount wasn't important. It was the recognition that I had helped her. So I think it's important to encourage children. I think it's an important experience to encourage children to make things, whether it's Legos or magnetic things that they put together and take apart. Or I have one of my granddaughters is upstairs right now, and she is watching YouTube videos on how to make little paper puppets. And don't you know, she has mastered the art of making the two jaws that come together. And I told her, I said, see, look what you've done. You've figured it out, and you don't need the help that you did on the first one. Because on the first one, Nana had to help her. And it took about 3 hours. But here she is, just entertaining herself and figuring stuff out on her own, and, not being so frustrated like she was the first time. And I just think that that is a wonderful thing to encourage kids to do, because it gives you the resilience later in life to figure things out. And I have more to say about that, because from my own experiences growing up and being encouraged to make things and figure things out, I have become a very resourceful adult person. And people would say, "What? Why are you doing that? I didn't know you could do that." And I said, "I didn't know I could do it either." I mean, I've done some things that have astounded even myself. I needed a little help from an ex-husband to change my own brakes, but I did it all by myself. He sat in the driveway and talked me through it. And I don't think I want to do it again, because I'm about 20 years older. But, from taking my dryer apart because something's wrong with it and it won't quite work the right way, and I don't have the money for somebody to come fix it. So, necessity becomes the mother of invention. But also having that resourcefulness is, and the idea that I can do this, I'll figure it out. That is so important. And of course, not many people know, but I have some trauma in my life, and I have depression. I have anxiety to the point several decades ago that I couldn't leave my house unless it was under very specific circumstances. And, I got through all of this. Not only did I get through it, but I figured out my problems. And, of course, I asked for help, and I did go to therapy, and I am on medicine now for depression. But that resourcefulness and that I'm going to figure this out attitude is so important to mental health. Also, having certain practices where you make things, you're in the present when you're making these things, and it gets you out of your own head. And that is one thing that I really want to stress with people, that the act of creativity, no matter what it is, whether you're cooking a meal or sewing a placemat or, doing woodworking or anything like that, being in the moment. And you could even paint rocks. Being in the moment helps your mental health. It gives you a break from your brain, and you can center yourself and ground yourself in activity with your hands. Even the act of writing with a pen on a piece of paper, as opposed to typing it on your phone. Writing things out with your hand is so much more connected to yourself. And that's what I like to encourage people to do, is make things with your hands. Do things with your hands. And get out of your head. Get out of your head a little bit. And take a little respite from all of the negative talk and the tapes, the old tapes that go through your head about, when you were a little kid, and, maybe you didn't have encouraging words spoken to you. And get those old voices out of your head and replace it with, look what I'm doing. I could do this, So today, what I'm going to do is I'm doing my laundry. Woohoo! And I'm going to put together a display rack that I got for my artwork. It's like a grid, metal grid kind of thing. And I'm also going to have to cook something for the kids to eat. And I'll probably try to clean up my room because the cats got in there and took one of my plants and strung it across my room. So I have a lot of dirt up there. I'm also going to be wrapping some Christmas presents, which is long overdue. I've got piles of boxes, and my bedroom and studio look like a hoarder's dream. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. And I hope you find something productive to do to just give your brain a break. And have a great day, everybody.